history here begins in 1914. A man named Edward Babcock arrived from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Back in Pittsburgh, Mr. Babcock owned a thriving lumber company. When he came to Florida on a hunting and fishing expedition, the first thing he saw was a vast area of untapped natural resources. Throughout the 1920s and 30s, up until the 1940s, lumber was the primary export. By the 1940s, the Babcocks began to diversify their operation. Limestone quarries, oil drilling, produce farming, and cattle ranching all came into play. In 1948, Edward passed away, turning the company over to his son, Fred Babcock. Fred was the only member of the Babcock family to live on this property on a full-time basis, building his home here and calling it the Cypress Lodge. Under Fred's management, the first major change occurred in 1965 when, for pennies on the dollar, he sold around 65,000 acres, give or take, to the state of Florida, becoming known today as the Babcock Webb Wildlife Management Area. That's in South Punta, Gorda, the very first wildlife management area in the entire state. Thank you very much, Fred Babcock. Now that left the Babcock family with about 96,000 acres, and they parlayed that 96,000 into one of the most successful cattle ranches and produce farms in the southeastern region of the United States. They tried to sell the remaining property to the state. The state couldn't make the purchase, so the Babcocks did the absolute unthinkable. They began entertaining developers. However, having been very conservation-minded throughout their operation, the Babcock family was very selective on the developer with whom they did business. The Kitson Development Group showed up with a vision to build the very first solar-powered community in America. The Kitson Group purchased the entire 96,000-acre Babcock Ranch. Then they turned around and did something unheard of for a large-scale developer. For pennies on the dollar and some very healthy tax incentives, they sold around 75,000 acres to the state of Florida, becoming known today as the Babcock Ranch Preserve. Now, that designation of our property as a preserve is very important. That means that the property we see during the tour will never experience any commercial growth. We'll never have a hotel, a motel. We'll never have condominiums. We'll never have a strip mall. We'll never have a KFC or a McDonald's. And thank goodness, not another Dollar General. What we see today remaining in its current state forever and ever. Now, the state of Florida, they understood the rich agricultural legacy that the Babcocks had built throughout their 100 years here. They didn't want this property to become idle. So in the very first public-private venture of its kind in Florida, the state owns the property, but they lease it to a private entity on a 15-year lease. Today, Tarpon Blue Agriculture holds the lease, the fourth largest beef cattle operation in Florida, and still one of the most successful produce farms in the entire southeast region. Still a working cattle ranch and a working produce farm. Now here in Florida, winter, spring, summer, and fall, they don't exist. We only have 2 seasons here in Florida. Not hot and hotter, the wet and the dry season. We are in the dry season right now. Why is that important, you may be wondering? Every bit of groundwater on our tour is rainwater. We are not spring-fed, nor are we a tributary of a larger body. So very dynamic changes occur out here twice a year. Where do you think the first place I zoomed into was? Right out here, so I know where the train tracks were back in the early 20th century. White-tailed deer underneath the trees over here to the right. And the Babcock Airport on our left-hand side. The 2 pieces of metal called threshold markers indicating the end of the runway. Airstrip Road began life as a rail line. This had train tracks on it. And this ditch, remember this ditch, very important. We're going to talk about it in a little while. It is not just a drainage ditch. Heading north on Airstrip Road, once part of the rail system out here on the property. A pair of sandhill cranes ahead of me. One of the largest birds in Florida, one of the more remarkable in the wild kingdom. Once the male and female sandhill mate one time, that is now a mated pair. They tend to stay together forever. They'll lay 1 or 2 eggs a season. When the eggs hatch, the baby sandhills are called a colt, and the colt stays with mom and dad for about a year. Right about the time that red plumage appears on their forehead is about when the baby birds leave mom and dad and begin their search for their own lifetime mate, and another white-tailed deer right outside our window here to the right. Gates over on the tree line, marking the entrance to the Cypress Lodge, Fred Babcock's home. The original lodge, built in the late 1950s, burned to the ground in 1988, but was quickly rebuilt, and Fred did live there until his passing in 1998. Oh, look at the quarter horses over there taking a break. You know, when you go out west, oh, another white-tailed deer right here. There's a couple of them. A fawn. Did you know the spots on the back of a fawn? You can identify male from female with the spots. On a baby buck, those spots on the deer's back that are perfectly parallel, that's a male. When the spots are random and kind of zigzaggy, that's a female. Now out in the distance, a herd of quarter horses belonging to the cowboys that live and work out here. When you go out west, to the Midwest, a lot of cattle ranchers have transitioned to gasoline-powered vehicles to round up their cattle. That'll never happen in Florida, and I'll tell you why. The cowboys will always be on horseback in Florida. 2 words, the slump. You take a gasoline-powered vehicle in the slump, chasing down cattle, I guarantee you're going to be walking home. A cow has a hoof, a horse has a hoof. Wherever the cattle can wander, the quarter horse can pursue. Ladies and gentlemen, America's original all-terrain vehicle, the American quarter horse. All right, moving ahead, we are entering the area in which the community of Rouville once stood. A bustling French frontier town of over 450 people, men, women, and children. Here to our right-hand side, the stables where the cowboys will keep their quarter horses when they're not out pushing cattle. Originally on the site where we see the stable today stood a small office building belonging to a company called the International Ocean Telegraph Company, the IOTC. We know it today as AT&T. Yeah, AT&T, the American Telegraph and Telephone Corporation. That's where they got their name. They started off in the telegraph service. As early as 1866, they began the process of extending telegraph service through this property from Lake City, Florida, all the way south to the island nation of Cuba. When we got north of Lake City up into the state of Georgia, Western Union took over the telegraph service. But here in Florida, it was the IOTC. We'll talk more about that history in just a little while. To our left-hand side, this beautiful 2-story building, built in 1934 by the Root Corporation, using lumber harvested from this very property. Today we call it the commissary. 100 years ago, this was the center of the community of 450 people called Rouville. Another one up in the front yard. Did you know that in American history, Benjamin Franklin tried to make the wild turkey our national symbol instead of the bald eagle? Strictly a North American species, if it weren't for the presence of the wild turkey, the Pilgrims would have perished by starvation. Could you imagine if you were in the military today and you had to march into battle with a turkey on your battle flag? Unheard of. Now folks, throughout the tour you're going to hear me say Telegraph Creek and Telegraph Swamp. That's interchangeable verbiage, okay? The swamp and the creek are one and the same. During the summertime when it rains every day, Telegraph Creek is a rapidly flowing body of water, all the way to the Caloosahatchee River down in Fort Myers. But here we are in the dry season. Without that daily rain shower, Telegraph Creek has been reduced to a series of isolated pockets of standing water. So here we go. During the summertime, we're going to drive through this about 3 feet deep with water coming over the spillway. The rail trestle to our right-hand side. A good number of juvenile alligators on the left. And there's a big boy out here in the middle. That's probably as close to a 10 or 11 foot alligator right in the middle. See the head? We're looking at the back right cheek. That alligator is facing away from us. There's one underwater. There he is. He's back. And lots of juveniles on the left-hand side. That'll be completely full of flowing water in the summertime. This whole area to the left will be full of water in the summertime. So we've seen the freshwater marsh. We've seen the pine flat. This area to our left is still pine flat. We're going to make our way around the corner here into another ecosystem called the upland prairie, or the Florida prairie. Now here in the pine flat, the soil holds a great deal of moisture. So just about any tree or plant that you find in Florida will grow in the pine flat. When we get out to the Florida prairie, the soil transitions into more of a sandy, a very well-drained soil. It doesn't hold a whole lot of moisture, so palm trees do pretty well, but the oak, the pine, and other plants, they don't really flourish out here on the upland prairie. And the Florida cracker cattle making their appearance. Direct lineal descendants of the original breed of cattle brought to North America from Spain by Ponce de Leon. No longer used for beef or dairy production, strictly a historical preservation breed, nothing more. The tall, slender trees, the bald cypress. Each individual cypress tree can grow a root diameter up to 120 feet. Because the cypress trees are so close together, the roots form a very solid foundation. They become very tightly interwoven just underground. Some of our new arrivals here. There's Daisy and her new baby over here to the right.
Look at the two babies. Looks like
Now we've been trying to figure out what to name. We've been trying to figure out what to name her baby. And I said, you know, the way Daisy puts away corn, we should name her baby Silo. Hi, Daisy.
Aww.
All right, I'm on. See you next week. Yeah, I thought Silo was a good name for a little bull. Now we move south, we're starting to see that gray material hanging down from the limbs of the oak tree called Spanish moss. It's not Spanish, it's not moss. True moss has a root network. Spanish moss doesn't have any roots. Much like a bromeliad or an air plant, gathering its nutrition from the wind and the rain. Now in American history, Henry Ford used Spanish moss to stuff the seat cushions on the first automobiles. Another young man came along and said, hey, I'm going to make mattresses. Oh, look, the Colts. Here's the baby sandhills on our left. If you ever wondered where Jim Henson got his inspiration for Big Bird, it is the baby sandhill crane. Now Henry Ford used Spanish moss to stuff the seat cushions on the first automobiles. Another young man came along and said, I'm going to make mattresses from it. And while those two men may have been experts in their own field of industry, they knew nothing about ecology. The Spanish moss, as beautiful as it may be, has a dark secret, ladies and gentlemen. It is the primary habitat for this nasty little microscopic mite, little bug called the red chigger. Don't pick it down out of the trees, don't pick it up off the ground. If you do, you're going to itch like crazy for about 5 to 7 days.
Oh, wow.
Go to the Hobby Lobby and buy the synthetic version, you'll thank me later. Now history tells us it became known as Spanish moss when the Eastern Europeans began migrating to North America. They thought it resembled the beards of the Spanish conquistadors, so they called it Spanish moss. That's why I was running a little bit late to pick you folks up. The cattle were all over the road on my last tour. They wouldn't get out of the way. Anybody see that bird just flew in front of us? That was a pileated woodpecker. Let's see if we can see him in here. I don't know where he went to. Oh, he keeps flying deeper in the woods. Never mind. Yeah, he disappeared. Dang it. I hate it when they do that. Alright, moving into the Telegraph Swamp. Folks, if today's your first time on our tour, you gotta come back in August or September when this area is entirely full of water. It is a completely different tour. It's impossible to describe how beautiful this is when there's a flowing body of water through the swamp. Named the Telegraph Swamp. Our namesake right outside your windows on the left, or right-hand side rather, I'm sorry, on the right side. Absolutely the last telegraph cables on the property. Laid here in the 1860s and a white-tailed deer up here to the front right. For your youngsters back there, the original text messaging right there. Text messaging is not a new concept. Only the technology has gotten better. At its peak, the International Ocean Telegraph Company transmitted about 50,000 messages a month. 10 cents got you 20 words. Right about now, the water would be about 3 feet deep by the middle of July.
You don't get stuck.
Nope. No, we got a nice solid road bed under us made up of the the roots of the cypress trees. Then they've got about 2 feet of gravel and 2 feet. Oh, here's the wild Piggly Wigglies, for whom DeSoto County, Florida has been named. Mr. DeSoto thought it'd be a great idea to leave a small group of Spanish pigs here in Florida in the hopes that they would reproduce and form a food source for future Spanish settlers. Well, let me tell you something, folks. Forget about bunny rabbits. The reproductive prowess of the wild hog is nothing short of amazing. A male known as a boar, a female known as a sow. A sow can get pregnant 3 times every year. Each litter, up to 20 piglets.
Oh my God.
It gets worse. Those baby pigs start making bacon at 7 months old. They are not even a whole year old yet. They're already capable of ridiculous rates of reproduction.
Wow.
The state of Florida classifies this animal as an invasive pest.
Right.
They are extremely destructive. 1.2 million in the state of Florida, between $15 and $20 million in property damage every year with their noses. They root up the soil with their noses. Then when it rains, it promotes erosion. Classified as an invasive pest, which means for the sportsmen and the sportswomen here in the Sunshine State, open season, year-round, and no limit on how many you harvest. But there's a catch. Strictly hunting them to try to control the population only has the net result of their reproductive rate maxing out. So, with an estimated 35 to 60,000 pigs on our property here, the cowboys that live and work here, they set traps. They try to trap the males. When they trap the boars, they neuter them, then they set them free. So a little birth control on the front side of that equation. Yeah. Now, we're only seeing about 3,500 acres out of 75,000 acres. So there are 14 hunting leases available on this property for private people like us. And there's a public hunting area that you access through a lottery. A very limited number of people allowed on the public hunting area. You are guaranteed quality game out here, for sure. I looked up the leases. I said, you know, if I ever hit the lottery, I'm getting a lease out here. I looked them up on FWC. The cheapest one is $7,500 a year. The most expensive is $52,000.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, if you go on YouTube, look up turkey hunter, Florida panther. About a month ago, there's a guy right out here just east of our tour route hunting for turkey. He's all camouflaged up. He's sitting up against a tree. He looks to his right, and from me to that palm tree was a Florida panther, a big Florida panther, about 120 pounds.
Wow.
You can hear his respiratory rate on the camera pick up, and that panther looked at him for a solid 30 seconds, turned around and just walked off. Amazing.
What the lucky guy.
Lucky guy. Folks, their only redeeming quality, the wild pig, they're quite delicious.
They are.
They really are. That's where I break. Yep.
Oh my God, he's brown.
Oh.
All right, here we go. Oh, wild turkey. Those are young males called jakes. They're less than 2 years old. Okay, so you remember when we turned on Airstrip Road, I pointed out the ditch, and I told you that Airstrip Road had train tracks on it. This is where we kind of tied that all together. All right, Airstrip Road is about 200 yards to our right. That little canal, oh, there's this big boar. There's a big male pig called a boar. That's about 170 pounds right there.
Oh, yeah.
All right, now here's that canal. That ditch comes right through here. Now back in 1952, our roadway that we're on right now, this wasn't here. So this ditch went right off into the swamp. We're going to talk about the significance of that here in just a minute. Okay, we're going to take a walk down our boardwalk. When we get off the bus, let's move to the shade right up in the front, and we'll stick together as a group, okay?
All right.
Folks, this is what Orlando and Kissimmee once looked like before that vacation mecca came to be. It's a common misconception that the Florida Everglades exists solely south of Lake Okeechobee. That's the Everglades National Park. But the Florida Everglades actually extend all the way up into Orlando and Kissimmee, Florida. Once a cypress swamp, just like this.
So those stumps there,
Sorry?
those stumps.
No, those are actually part of the root network. They're called cypress knots or cypress knees. They grow upwards out of the root network. They don't know anything about what they do though. They don't hold any nutrition, they don't exchange gas, they don't anchor the tree, but we know that they grow to a height that tells us how deep the water gets. So during the wet season, you're going to see about 5 or 6 inches.
This one is finished.
That one will hurt you. Yep, that one will hurt you. But on a banded water snake, the bottom jaw has vertical white and black stripes. To the bulkhead at the front of the bus.
Oh, wow.
Capable of speeds over dry land of up to 35 miles an hour for about 70 yards in a straight line. If anybody ever tells you, if you get chased by an alligator, you should zigzag. Look them dead in the eye and go, bless your heart, and turn around and walk away because they know nothing. All right? The straightest, the quickest distance between 2 points is a straight line. If something's nipping at your behind, you don't want to zigzag.
Right.
Plus, right in front of the alligator's face, where are his eyes? His eyes are out here on the side, right? So right in front of their nose is a dead area. It's a blind spot. Should you ever get chased by an alligator? Probably not. But if you ever find yourself in that unfortunate incident, straight ahead, okay? You're in their blind spot, okay? Remember that. Respect them. No need to fear them. Don't feed them. And if you see somebody feeding them, please call law enforcement right away and report that occurrence. A good description, a good location. All right. Let's talk about snakes real quick. Don't worry, I don't have any snakes on the bus that I know about. Here in Florida, 70 different species of snakes. But in Southwest Florida, only 4 are venomous. The pygmy rattlesnake, his bigger cousin, the eastern diamondback rattlesnake, the cottonmouth, also called the water moccasin, which is what we just saw, and a little colorful snake called the coral snake. Now, coral snakes are beautiful. Black, red, and yellow banding around their body. Almost identical to the non-venomous species called the scarlet or scarlet king snake. Also, red, yellow, and black banding. So how do you tell them apart? Red touching yellow kills a fellow, red touching black, a friend of Jack. If the red and yellow bands are touching, that pattern will continue the entire length of that snake. That's the venomous coral snake. You're going to want to move away. Red touching yellow can kill a fellow. Boy, this pond is almost completely dried up. Our gator's still in here. Yeah, there she is. There's a 6-foot gator at the base of the tree. See, it looks like a rock in front of the tree. We're looking at the left cheek. She's facing from right to left.
So what they feeding? So what they feeding?
I'm sorry?
What they feeding? What they feeding? Yeah, what they feeding right now?
Birds that come down for a drink. Smaller animals that come down for a drink, she'll grab them. She won't be in here very much longer. She's going to find a lot more water. She'll move out probably sometime in the next week. Yeah, now you can see her. This is an old cattle drive route. This section of swamp is an old cattle drive trail. That's why there's a fence to the left. There used to be a fence on the right. There's an old fence post right there next to the tree. There's another one right up here. No longer used for that purpose. There's gators everywhere. The pups in the water that we see are mostly the mosquito
That's a
fish.
turtle. Are there turtles here?
There are soft-shell turtles. You're going to see one here.
I see. Oh, he just went under.
To our right, a lot of the movie Just Cause was filmed here. About 80% of the outdoor scenes were filmed right in this general vicinity. The roadway to our right appears in the movie quite frequently. In the movie, it is called Highway 111. Now, where we really are, Airstrip Road. Remember we made a left on Airstrip? If we made a right, this is where we come out. The airstrip is about 1,000 yards to our right, as is the boardwalk and the other swamp. There's a scene in the movie where Sean Connery jumps into a ditch. I can't tell you what he does there, that will be a spoiler, but this is where they filmed that scene. Ladies and gentlemen, Sean Connery's ditch on our right-hand side. It's a great murder mystery, you'll enjoy it. Babcock Ranch Eagle Forge does not advertise. However, we do partner with TripAdvisor.com. Your written reviews are the lifeblood of this store. If you'd like to leave us a written review, go to TripAdvisor.com. Babcock Ranch Eagle Forge. Once again, my name is Brad. It has been my absolute pleasure to have you all on board this afternoon. I will definitely look up boiled oak when I go home tonight and find the difference, because I gotta know. Inquiring minds have to know. Come on back and see us again in the wet season. August and September will be the height of the wet season. You will not believe the changes that occur out here on this property. It's absolutely beautiful. May God bless each and everybody who's safe and happy and prosperous 2024. And y'all come back and see us now. You hear? Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.